Cheesepress
What do we do?
Publish.
And what's today?
I have no idea.
Monday, December 2nd. Hi, I'm Mare.
I'm Miss Andrea.
And
And we are Cheesepress Publishing.
we are. We're not going to talk about Cheesepress today,
If you've been paying attention, a large part of what we do is curriculum. So part of what we do is publish curriculum. And why do we publish curriculum?
We publish curriculum because we have this sister organization. We have a 501c3. It's an alternative educational nonprofit called Hazelwood Prep.
Mm-hmm.
And today is not nearly as important as tomorrow is, because tomorrow, Tuesday, December 3rd, is Giving Tuesday.
Right.
And so today we're going to take a personal point of privilege, and we're going to talk about our nonprofit, because we're going to be doing a whole lot of fundraising for our nonprofit tomorrow for Giving Tuesday.
For the next 30-ish hours. Georgia Gives started in 2012. It married with Giving Tuesday in 2017. And the reason that it exists is to help not-for-profit organizations raise money. We're not begging you all for money daily. Most organizations wait for this day, and even nationwide, because Giving Tuesday is nationwide. The begging.
There's a whole celebration of giving on Georgia Gives Day.
Right.
You have Thanksgiving.
Right.
Traditionally, the day following Thanksgiving is Black Friday.
Yes.
Go out and buy all the Christmas presents. There are all the specials, all the fabulous things. You have Small Business Saturday. So then you go spend all your money at local small businesses. You have Cyber Monday, which is today. You're going to go do all of your shopping and have all your specials online. And so the wider philanthropic community said, so the Tuesday Giving to be the day that we celebrate nonprofits, and we go lots of money. And so it's kind of all this whole Thanksgiving and extended Thanksgiving traditions.
Now, there are benefits to donating money.
There are.
This time of year. Number one, if you realize that you're going to have a very large tax burden and you'd like to give money to a not-for-profit, it will lower your tax burden load to go ahead and give money.
So it was already customary.
To not-for-profits. It's absolutely customary. You can give from, I think, a month ago till the end of the year through the Giving Tuesday organization. We'd love for you all to give tomorrow. Also, sometimes have those people who you don't know what to buy anything for. I have 2 of them in my household. If they want something, they just go and get it. And I never know what to give them. So Giving Tuesday might be a day for you, even if you're not giving to us, to look at this person and say, what not-for-profit do they support? What type of organizations do they support? And then you can give money in their name. Christmas is covered, and you're not buying them something they're never going to use.
I mean, Christmas is covered, but there are also a slew of holidays between now and the end of the year, many of which involve gift giving.
Right.
And
just to talk a little bit about why this is a day that people choose to ask for donations and that people give this time of year.
And so
there's that.
One of the reasons that we participate so heavily in Georgia Gives Day is we're a fairly small nonprofit. We don't have these huge budgets. We don't run with this huge, dollar that we raise goes toward our programming, goes toward paying for our teachers, for our tutors, for the people who support our programming. It goes into our theater program, which is an amazing theater program. We get to put our kids on a professional stage with professional tech people teaching them how to, run board and how to set up the sound and all of that kind of stuff. And so we have to pay people to help with that. And every dollar that we raise goes into that. We have an endowment. We don't have this pot of cash that we're sitting on. Georgia Gives Day has various competitions. They have competitions for the people who raise the most money. They have golden tickets that are awarded randomly to like a lottery draw. They have one of the things that we have been very successful with, something called Power Hours. And within a specific time frame, you get 1 hour, and the nonprofit with the most unique donors wins an additional bonus prize. And the last few years, we have won the West Rock Power Hour. We've got our hour selected for this year, and we're going to try to do that again. And so that's going to be part of our live stream tomorrow.
Yes.
We're live tomorrow.
Right.
And so we will do that during our power hour, and we'll be over here on our phones texting people, telling them it's time to give, it's time to give, time to give. And there are all kinds of wild things planned. I don't even know what I might be asked to do tomorrow. I'm a little afraid. But we'll be here tomorrow, and hopefully you will as well. All right, what was your thought? You were holding it. Did it go away?
So the thing that makes our theater programming interesting is that we don't do what a lot of programs do and create this amazing show and give children the scripts and dress them up in costumes and then just have them say the lines. Because maybe we don't like ourselves so much. I don't know. But we get them involved from the first step of production. Children they're making decisions about the house music. They're making decisions about any music used in the show. They might be creating the music. They're making decisions about what lighting we should have. They're making decisions about props. They're making decisions about set. They're making decisions about costuming. They're measuring each other. They're sewing. They're forcing their parents to take them to places to get things.
Like thrift stores.
It is their
we guide them.
We the skills they need to carry out these tasks. And we use professionals in many cases to help us with that.
We even gave one of our older students who's been with us for a long time, has gone through this process many times, the opportunity to direct the show that we put on stage last spring.
Yes, was directed by a student and stage managed by another student and costumed by 2 other students and fight by another student.
Yeah.
Because he'd been with the fight choreographer enough times and he was a senior at the time.
Right.
And so...
And on colleges right now in theater with a concentration in fight choreography. He's also a heck of a dramaturg, which is
an amazing dramaturg.
Something that,
children do the dramaturgy for the shows. So,
and if you don't know what that is, that's the research element of the show. That's making sure that you have continuity. So the director may say, like we did As You Like It. We're going to set this in 1968, Summer of Love. It's going to be the forests in Virginia. So, okay, now you need to understand the text of As You Like It. You need to understand this counterculture that is inherent in that text. How does that lay over that time period? How does that fit into the history? And then you have to understand the history. And you have to understand how that works. And so are all of the costumes in that same time period? What know about the relationships between the counterculture, between the establishment and the hippies, what looked like. The show that he actually dramaturged the most was Hamlet. And
that was a lot about pronunciations. Can you make sure we're going to be pronouncing this word correctly?
And how old is Hamlet and how old is Ophelia? So what does that relationship look like based on what the texts are what the clues are that we get from the text? And that's actually, that dramaturgy thing is one of the things that's made him very, very appealing to the colleges he's talked to so far. That research behind a show really makes a difference. And, a lot of times in the prepackaged shows, somebody's done that work along the way, whether you have the people on the production staff that have that work in hand, maybe not. Our kids are doing that or being taught to do that from the beginning.
Right. And so that's what's unique about our theater program. And parents have said to us at the end of the show, that was stressful, but we're so glad that you put them in charge because now they know that they can go get jobs in this discipline and they know how to do more than just be a pretty face on the stage, who finds.
And not only do we do all of this with the kids and the kids are making all these decisions, we do this with Shakespeare. So it's classical theater. It's not just your ordinary, like a standard play that everybody else in the world is doing.
Right.
It's education heavy classical theater experience.
It's a true exercise in theater education. And so that's one of the things that we do here at Hazelwood Prep. We ended up doing classical theater because of our classical approach to history, right? And so this year we're doing Caesar because this year we're also doing ancient history. And we find Julius Caesar at the end of the ancient history timeline. And so this is also part of their history/language arts class. They are going to be doing a deep dive to Julius Caesar this spring, not just to perform it on the stage, but to truly understand the text.
And how it fits with the history and everything else.
Right. And so now they're learning the history, they're understanding the text, and then they're performing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, seeing that our friend Shalance behind the computer has our website up over there, hazelwoodprep.org. It has information on how to be a seasoned sponsor for our theater program and how to, what sponsorship levels are. And so reach out to us and, we'll get in the program. We'll get you on the T-shirts.
So right now we're gearing up. I think I said that. We're gearing up to do Julius Caesar.
Yep.
And we audition in mid-January. So what else do we do besides theater? Because we could talk about
theater forever.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a thing that I'm super, super passionate about.
Yeah. It's funny. In my own channel this week, I was talking about how important my love for theater was and how it was important to me to get back into theater because I'd been teaching for 5 years.
Yep.
And then it dawned on me this morning that we are pushing our arts program forward. This is going to be awesome. Like, I didn't even realize that something that I was longing for was now that we've gotten the history part down and we realize how the science and math are going to work. Now we can turn back toward the arts and finally get to build that up. And honestly, that's the reason why we need to raise funds.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and part of it too is I have been directing the shows.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to last year when we had a student director,
Mm-hmm.
I directed all of the shows that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And this year we have hired a director
Mm-hmm.
and hired support staff.
Mm-hmm.
And has stepping back more to the producer role, which is very much less a day-to-day kind of thing. And, I'm cheerleading and raising money and, letting our team take over and run that theater program. So
not only that, but we exist, Hazelwood Prep and Cheesepress exist in 2,000 square feet.
Yes.
We need 1,000 square feet.
At least.
And we have an opportunity to do that this summer.
Yep.
Should things fall into place.
Which is another really important reason for you to give money to Hazelwood Prep on Giving Tuesday, because we would love to be able to expand the space.
Space is filled, we can't expand.
Right.
Without moving.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would love to be able to have a larger space, have a more dedicated space for things like this.
Mm-hmm.
What you don't see is that every week we come in and we reset what we're doing here. And this takes time for us to pull everything out, get everything set up. And if we had a dedicated film sound space that we could just leave set up all the time, you'd us more often.
Yeah,
which could be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know.
Yeah, we actually are filming in our library. So, which is fine.
Also a classroom sometimes,
which is also
depending on.
Well, it's where the creative writing and things of that nature happen. Right.
The class happens in here. I mean, we talk about the government class. Government class is also
the best.
Kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Is kind of the government class is something that we came up with 4 years ago. So we have a number of people in our community, parents, students, people who are sort of adjacent to what we're doing, who are all very avid tabletop role-playing game fans. A lot of them play Pathfinder. A lot of them play D&D, different things like this. And so
I have an amazing parent who kind of does tabletop role-playing kind of as a ministry. And then he had created this world and he was like, use this for the government game.
Right.
And so he created this world.
It had some built-in conflict.
And some city-state kind of things and set us up perfectly to build a nation.
So there are these 3 countries and there's a city-state, and the 4 of these government entities have to come together to form a more perfect union, because the one, which is kind of in the plains climate area where all of the food is grown, has been invaded by an outside force because they want to take over the food production. And so for the sake of everybody, they have to come together, they have to create a country so that they can protect this food supply. And so the kids, all as representatives of these different nations and city-states, they sit down, they do a constitutional convention, they come together, they have a constitutional convention, they create a government, inevitably, because they're doing homework that teaches them U.S. government.
The homework is to review the U.S. government documents and rules.
And then they come in and build their own. And inevitably, the kids always want to do something that's different than American.
Mm-hmm.
They tried a tricameral government last year that wound up folding in on itself.
Mm-hmm.
This time they did a government of elites. I think it's so far it's felt more like the British Parliament with your different social stratus, like lords and commons kind of deal. That's where they fell in so far this year. Then they're not done this year. But I think that they've gotten through writing the Constitution.
They have to write the Constitution because then they have to write the Constitution. They're making laws.
So they're in
the legislation phase. And so when they come back from the holidays, they're going to be setting up their economy.
Right. So it's done in phases. You've got your constitutional convention. You have to write your constitution. Then they all become lawmakers, however that looks based on the constitution that they wrote. And so they have to pass laws. So everybody has to write a law. They might write a press release about it. Things. Then they transition into doing the executive branch, whatever their executive branch looks like. They might hold cabinet positions, whatever that looks like. And at the same time, they're in game fighting this war against these invaders to liberate their food supply. And then they do the judicial branch where inevitably the instructors have said, here's a law that you passed and here's something that happened. And now you have to adjudicate this. Does, this thing that happened, does it fit with your law or not? And so they do that. And then they're going to set up the economy and they're going to run that in this world. And so it's just done in these different phases, alongside learning about what actually happens in American government. And it's really a fun class.
It is the most fun watching them look at what's actually going on in government and decide that they can fix it in creating their own world, and then just bumping heads and figuring it out, and having filibusters to aggravate each other. And that's one of our most fun classes to sit in and listen, because it's extremely entertaining class, and the kids really like it.
It is.
I don't even know. Currently, we teach it aligned with ancient history, so every 4 years. I don't know.
It might need to be more.
It might need to be every 2 years.
That's fair. It would work well with early modern too. It would work well because early modern is when you're starting to get modern democracies.
Right. So what else do we do that's different or unique, or just us?
It's going to show up. There's a lag. It's fine. It's supposed to be a lag. So what you will see from us here on this channel frequently, because we are Cheesepress Publishing, is our curriculum. Our curriculum was written for Hazelwood Prep.
Right.
The whole reason that these books exist is because of Hazelwood Prep. Because we teach history in a 4-year model. That was something that we decided to do very early on. We both believe in the classical method of education. There's a whole YouTube video of different educational styles and philosophies and what they mean, so you have some understanding. But the classical model, you teach history on a 4-year cycle. You teach ancient history, you teach medieval, early modern, and then modern. And we do that because when you teach history in a more traditional format, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, in order to teach world history over that kind of time period, you lose so much information that you aren't really able to follow the threads through history. And the threads are kind of important to understanding and analyzing how history happens. You don't just have historical events appearing out of nowhere and then disappearing. There's a cause for everything. There are effects from everything. And if you're not looking at this whole picture, then you lose a lot of that. And so that's the reason that we teach it over 4 years. It's pretty much a standard for any college prep program that you're going to get English language arts for 4 years. And English language arts and history nest so well together that it's kind of wild to not teach them concurrently. It is
wild to not teach it concurrently. It's time consuming to not teach it concurrently, and it causes I'm not going to say it causes confusion, but when you teach the same literature that follows the history timeline, the children's brains just accept it so readily.
You're building on ideas instead of teaching these disjointed things.
Like your literature reinforces whatever you just taught in history. So that story you're reading about someone goes along with whatever conflict is happening in the world and things of that nature. For instance, the
World War I was the first time that you have this kind of total war thing. Being that you have governments that are creating this propaganda that is supporting the war effort. They're controlling information in a way that you don't really know what's happening on the battlefield, because that would, you have these democracies, people, arguing about whether we should war or not if they knew how brutal this trench warfare was, all of these other things. So you have this whole, everything that the government is doing focused solely on this war effort. And you have these young men that are going to war, a lot of them British, that are getting in the trenches. And one of the ways that they're dealing with the horrors of what they're seeing is to write. And there's a whole genre of trench poetry that these young British men are writing about the horrors of war. And so you dive into this whole analyzing the poetry, which is already kind of this big thing that had been in England for a while prior to World War I. And there was this huge focus on poetry in the British experience. And so now you have soldiers that are writing about what's happening. And it's undermining the propaganda that the British government's putting out there. It's sharing details about battles and about what's happening.
It's citizen journalism.
It's citizen journalism that the being not allowed to publish because the government's controlling that information. And so it's kind of this backdoor way in to share information with the people. That's this very democratic movement, but it's all being done through literature. And so if you aren't studying your language arts and your history together, you're losing these really rich elements and details about why things are happening.
Right. Absolutely. It's just a really good nesting.
And so in ancient history, we do a lot of mythology. We do a lot of, we read the Epic of Gilgamesh. Some of it, we read parts. It's an abridged version, so it's appropriate for middle schoolers.
Ancient literature is a lot, so we have to abridge a bit of it. Yeah.
Or reinterpret it. Yes. Sometimes we just retell it. But there are some good literature options out there that the kids can read. But that's kind of, what we focus on. Mythology, we focus on the stories that we actually have from tablets and, existing records from when we first have history and written language.
Right.
And, then we wind up with and then ultimately the ancient Romans.
Right.
Because ancient history kind of ends with the fall of the empire.
Right.
The whole Roman Empire didn't fall. The Eastern Roman Empire just renamed itself.
Right.
But.
Yes. And so then we do medieval, and then the literature we tend to start with is called
Beowulf.
Beowulf, right. And I think a Shakespeare that we do for that.
We did Hamlet.
Hamlet fits into that time period.
The Scottish play also can be done in that time period as well.
Right.
Works very well with that time period.
And we talk about, I'm blanking, because there's so many different things fighting. But I'm thinking about the rise of Islam and
the Mongols.
And the Mongols and the plague.
And the plague.
If you're looking good. And
if you had to sum up medieval history.
China and Japan are a great deal of fun.
China and Japan are a great deal of fun during that time period. And if you had to sum up medieval history on a worldwide scale, it would end with, and then the Mongols invaded, and then the plague happened.
Right. There was a huge dieback right there.
And it was largely because of one of those two
forces. Either the Mongols or the plague.
Yep.
Then we open up with the Italian Renaissance.
We've got the age of, we have the Crusades.
Right.
Because Crusades are going to the age of exploration.
Right.
And that's the value of teaching the classical model. Because if you're not teaching the classical model, you don't
know why they crusaded.
Well, you don't understand that Islam begins as a very reactionary movement to the Jewish people, to the Christian people, who many of whom have adopted these idols. And it's this reactionary response to idolatry is fundamentally bad and it's against everything that we've all known for millennia. It was. It was. And so you have of this new religion that is, we're going to wipe out all of the idols. And now we've got this conflict because we're going to wipe out all of the idols. And so you have Christian Europe that's butting heads with this rise of Islam, and they're starting to argue over these key places that are, we've been trading on the Silk Road China since before we had written record of anything. And so Europe is used to having silks. They're used to having tea. They're used to having spices. They've been trading on the Silk Road for thousands of years. Now we're fighting over this key strategic piece of land that connects these trade routes. And so you have the Christians, you have the Muslims, they're all fighting over what's left of the Roman Empire in the East. And ultimately, the Muslims win. And so Christian Europe has, they go through all of the, back and forth of the Middle East. This trade route is broken. You do have...
And they want that tea.
And they want that European country that still is like, never had a problem with you. We'll use this road, right? But everybody else is like, well, we can't use the road now. Let's see what happens if we build boats. And we're going to take they've already had the boats, but let's take these boats and let's see if we can get to where we're used to trading by boat. And once they start making these long voyages on boat and okay, we have to resupply them. It's like, well, we're going to have to stop and get supplies. And, here as we're sailing down the west, they don't have what we like to eat. So here, let's just take over this port. We're going to run this port and we're going to stock it with what we want. And we're just going to, they're not really managing it. It's fine. Hours now. And so
this communal living is inconvenient for us.
Right. Yeah. Because it doesn't give us what we want to have. And so taking over these port cities. And that's the early colonization from Portugal. And then it kind of leads toward, well, if we can run a port, we could run the whole area. They've got some really fabulous natural resources. And why shouldn't we have that? And so then you have full-blown colonialism, which is largely the Spanish and the English. Well, the English come much later. The English actually are not in the core front of colonialism.
No, back.
The Spanish look at what the Portuguese are doing and saying, hey, this is how we can do it better. And then you have Japan that looks at what Portugal's doing as they're making their way over there. And they're like, oh, what we're not going to do is that. And they eat them out of the country and say, we're now going to close our borders to everybody except the Dutch. Because the Dutch are okay. The Dutch aren't trying to convert us to some weird religion. And, then you get colonialism out of this. Don't get colonialism without Islam being this reaction to the idolatry. And you miss all of those steps in that bigger story.
Right. I mean, that's just not, traditionally that's learned history. And so you're given the impression of people were minding their own business, living their best lives, and some people came and took stuff. And that's kind of not how it happened.
There's an element, but
they did come and they took it, but they wanted.
Right. But there's a much bigger story behind it.
But each time someone came and took something, it was because something pushed them. Were they opportunists? Absolutely. But there's a whole history is a story over centuries. And if you follow it, it all makes so much better sense than going, okay, there was World War I. Okay, there was World War II, which I still mixed up when I'm trying to figure them out in my head, right? But I know what happened in each one. I just forget what they are named, which is crazy because it's one. And anyway, so
just knowing which one came first.
That should be easy.
It should be easy because it's oddly different between the two, which is interesting because they're very close together.
No, it's like knowing twins, and this is the twin with these. They'll mix their names. That's World War I and World War II for me.
I accept that. So, because one of the key reasons that you're going to learn history, key reasons you teach history is critical thinking and reasoning. And that's the point of teaching history. And if you lose the cause and effect, then you're losing the opportunity to develop those critical thinking skills.
Now, something we don't do in our history curriculum, and we just don't do in general, is force children to remember all the dates and names, because everyone has a pocket computer. We want them to know the journey of what happened, to know the story. If the dates and names stick, that's magical.
Right.
But you can always
If you don't, you
access
can
that
always Google that.
information. But to know
Like, have a general
what
time
happened,
frame.
how and why, to be so much more important. And also with all this information on the internet, a huge part of what we teach is how to find the information and then decipher what is actual history from what is a retelling or propaganda.
Right. We do an enormous amount of research with it. And unfortunately, there are a large number of history-themed materials out there that are largely historical and are largely telling things correctly. And then they add in, but there were aliens, or something else. They do the wild, or just sort of as though all of this other stuff that is more or less correct gives them credibility to whatever the wild random thing is.
My favorite is the History Channel. And they're like,
that used to be such a good channel.
My brain just dropped what I was about to talk about. The Stonehenge.
Yes.
Whatever caused these large stones. It's a mystery. It's a clock. It's a clock. Somebody was like, when should I plant? I know. Let's build this clock, and when the sun hits it just right, we know it's time to plant our crops and they won't freeze.
Humans went and got these stones and they put them up to understand the patterns of seasons, and so that they...
So when I say a clock, I mean a giant calendar.
Yeah, that's the better. That's the better.
But it was something built. It wasn't this huge mystery that nobody knows, and they insinuate that some mysterious force. Nah, just people. Just people. So, yeah. And so that's what with history and arts. And we also started adding, because we started out as a history program, period. But we also started adding math and science. We started trickling in it a couple years ago, but we started teaching it as a course last year. And so telling the kids, there's all these math programs online, just go do this, really cute. And we even set up tutoring times for them to come in and say, I had problems with these things. But they were only doing the math when they were sitting in front of us at tutoring time, and that's not enough.
It's not.
And so we've kind of married math and science, and we teach them kind of as a unit, back to back.
Yeah.
And the reason why we teach them together, and I had this conversation today, is that something the public schools do wrong, in my assessment, is they'll just throw you into, they'll do math in order. You'll get algebra, geometry, or algebra 2, and then the other one, and then a harder math. But then you'll be in algebra or geometry, and they'll throw chemistry at you. You need algebra 2 math to fully understand chemistry. And so then they're like, I guess this kid wasn't good at science. They got to see it's okay. Not everyone's good at science. No, you didn't equip the child with the math that is necessary for them to be successful in chemistry. I'm sorry, it frustrates the snot out of me.
Yeah.
Because I've had so many nephews go, I wasn't in chemistry until semester 2. What math and geometry? That's why. Because the math got real that you hadn't been exposed to yet.
Yep.
And so that's why we kind of track them together, so that we can make sure you have the math grounding you need for the science you're about to get.
Right. And the science that we do, we had always planned to do some science once we had our own building anyway, because we wanted the kids to have experience with lab science.
Right. And that's one of the things the colleges are pushing back on as far as homeschooling is concerned, because they're like, that's great, you did this online science course, but where are your labs? So we're doing labs here so that they have their lab sheets to put in their portfolio to show should someone ask.
Right. And so the audience that our nonprofit serves, mostly, largely homeschool students. Some of them are digitally schooled students, like they're doing a whole accredited program that's
or non-accredited.
Sometimes non-accredited, but talking about the range of experiences, there are fully accredited programs that kids are doing, and some of those might have some lab component science, but a lot of times it's still something that's missing. That they get all of the theoretical, so they still have to go do the hands-on.
And so if a child is going into anything in the medical field or the biological sciences and they don't have those labs, or the chemical sciences, they don't have those labs, they're going to miss out on opportunities for some really good college opportunities. Because the lower colleges will take them, but the gold colleges won't. And so it's important to us that they have the opportunity to do these science experiments here. Is there anything else that's different about Hazelwood Prep that people should know about? I think that covers a lot of it. We are doing a visual arts class now.
That's what I was just about to, that we're trying to fill in with more of the electives.
And we are gearing into music
right.
strongly. There'll be opportunities coming up for individual voice lessons, for individual tutoring.
Audition prep, that kind of thing.
Yes. I've seen it happen in person. Somebody needed help getting the audition together, and some musical human on the other side of the camera really helped them pull the soul together and do a really good job.
Turned in an amazing audition.
Yes. And so we're here. We are a not-for-profit. We are directors of the program. This is not how we make money at all. We're in a situation right now where homeschooling may become very important to a lot of people really soon. Help us build a program that's going to support the local communities.
Yep.
Because once we get this down, we'll probably go off and build another one.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is our goal.
Our goal
is to replicate what we've got here in other places.
Until next time.